Rich family's son spits on servant. What happens next shocks everyone. Mrs. Maxwell lived in a world wrapped in elegance and wealth. She was the wife of Mr. Henry Maxwell, a distinguished lawyer known far and wide for his brilliance and integrity. Their mansion stood like a monument of success in the heart of the city, polished floors, glittering chandeliers, a fleet of cars, and a small army of domestic staff who kept the household running like clockwork. But behind the grand walls was a truth few dared to speak of. Mrs. Maxwell carried herself with an air of superiority. Her voice often rang through the halls, not with grace, but with scorn. The domestic workers, men and women much older than her, some old enough to be her parents, were treated with cold disdain. She barely spoke to them with decency, and when she did, it was to bark commands or criticize their efforts. Why? Because they were poor, because they served. She believed that wealth was the ultimate measure of worth, and her children, 2 boys aged 12 and 14, inherited her attitude like an heirloom. They never said please or thank you, never offered a helping hand, and were quick to insult or mock the very people who served them daily. Sadly, Mrs. Maxwell never corrected them. In her eyes, they were simply behaving as they should as privileged children of an elite family. This continued for years until a single day unraveled the illusion of control and forced a long overdue awakening. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon. Mr. Maxwell, usually away in court or at his office, was spending the day at home. Craving a refreshing drink, he called out to one of the servants for a glass of fresh orange juice. As always, the request was met with swift and silent obedience. Moments later, Mrs. Maxwell and their younger son also made requests, peanuts and a glass of water, which the servant brought without complaint. Then, the moment that changed everything, their son, lounging comfortably on the patio, called out lazily, "Bring me my stockings." The elderly servant, who had just returned from fulfilling the other requests, turned back quietly to get them. He came forward, stooping slightly with age, and gently handed the boy the pair. But instead of a thank you, the boy laughed and said, "You're such a bushman." The servant blinked, surprised by the insult. "Why would you call me that?" he asked, maintaining his calm. The boy's response was shocking. He spat directly into the servant's face and followed it with a slap. Silence. Time seemed to freeze. The servant, usually the picture of patience, snapped. Years of silent suffering, insults, and indignity exploded in a single moment. He raised his hand and slapped the boy across the cheek. Not in hatred, but in heartbroken defiance. The slap echoed like a thunderclap. Inside the house, Mr. and Mrs. Maxwell jumped up at the sound. Rushing out, they found their son rubbing his cheek, eyes wide with disbelief, while the servant stood trembling, not in fear, but in restrained fury. "What happened here?" Mrs. Maxwell screamed, her eyes shooting daggers at the servant. He looked her in the eye, and voice shaking but honest, explained everything. "I served your family for over a decade. I've carried water, cleaned messes, served food. I've taken insults from your children and disrespect from you, madam. But today, he spat in my face and slapped me. I asked him why he insulted me, and he answered with violence." Mrs. Maxwell, without missing a beat, said coldly, "You should have come to me. I would have handled it." Mr. Maxwell, silent until now, stepped forward. His face was tight with emotion, disappointment, anger, and something deeper. "So you could pat his back and tell the servant to forgive and forget?" he said sharply. "So you could excuse his actions like you've done for years?" His voice grew louder, not with rage, but with the weight of truth. "Enough is enough. Everyone's child matters, not just yours, Margaret. That boy may be our son, but that man is someone's father, someone's brother, someone's child. And we failed to teach our children respect because we were too busy playing royalty in our own home." The weight of his words hung in the air. Mrs. Maxwell was stunned. Her pride shriveled under her husband's gaze. The children, for the first time, looked at their father with unease. They had never seen him this serious. Then he turned to the servant and said, "You should never have been made to endure such treatment. I apologize not just for today, but for all the days we let this go on. It ends now." From that moment, the tone of the Maxwell household changed. The children were held accountable. They were given chores, not as punishment, but as a lesson in humility. Mrs. Maxwell began attending therapy to confront her own biases and wounds that led to her behavior. She started talking to the staff with genuine respect, learning their names, asking about their families, and slowly mending the years of mistreatment. And the servant? He chose to stay not because he had no other option, but because Mr. Maxwell had given him something no salary could buy: dignity. The house was still grand. The chandeliers still sparkled. But now, it glowed with something richer than gold: respect, humility, and the understanding that every human being deserves to be seen and valued.